Throughout history, people have used chemical weapons for various reasons, driven by both tactical and strategic considerations. From the Greeks poisoning a well running to a besieged city in 590 BC, to Greek fire being used in the 7th and 8th centuries, chemical warfare has been used in all corners of the world to gain a battlefield advantage, inflict fear, and circumvent traditional defenses. Chemical agents, including toxic gases and poisons, could create chaos, disrupt enemy lines, and cause mass casualties. We often think of World War I as the starting point for the use of chemical warfare, but the earliest known cases of chemical warfare date back much further. In this video, we explore some of the ancient to the modern chemical weapons used throughout history. In the shadowy world of ancient warfare, one weapon stood out as a true marvel: Greek fire. In the 7th century AD, the Byzantine Empire harnessed the power of fire with the creation of Greek fire, a weapon of destruction unlike any before its time. This formidable incendiary weapon was able to fire massive flames in a continuous jet, burning a trail of destruction in its path that was nearly impossible to extinguish. Though the exact recipe for Greek fire remains a mystery to this day, historians believe that they have uncovered some of the fascinating practical ways this mysterious ancient weapon was used. Following on from this, the earliest known archaeological record of gas warfare dates to the Roman-Persian Wars. Studies conducted on the remains of collapsed tunnels at Dura Europos in Syria shed light on a harrowing episode during the 3rd century AD siege of the town. It was during this conflict that the Sasanians employed a crude yet effective method. They combined bitumen and sulfur crystals, setting them ablaze to produce dense clouds of suffocating sulfur dioxide gas. When this improvised gas weapon was ignited, the results were catastrophic. In a mere span of 2 minutes, the deadly fumes claimed the lives of 90 Roman soldiers and a lone Sasanian, believed to have been the individual responsible for igniting the deadly concoction. This chilling historical incident serves as a stark reminder of the early utilization of chemical warfare in ancient conflicts. In 326 BC, accounts from Diodorus of Sicily, Strabo, and Quintus Curtius recounted an episode during which Alexander the Great and his Macedonian army encountered poisonous weaponry while in the regions of Pakistan and India. The defenders of the city of Harmatelia had coated their weapons with a deadly substance obtained from the decomposing bodies of snakes left to rot in the sun. It was believed that the venom from these snakes had permeated the liquefying tissue. Diodorus provided a vivid description of the suffering experienced by the wounded soldiers. Initially, Alexander's troops experienced numbness, followed by excruciating pains and convulsive spasms. Their skin turned cold, and they began vomiting bile. Gangrene spread rapidly, ultimately leading to a gruesome demise. Historians have since determined that the venom responsible for these symptoms was sourced from the Russell's viper. This venom induces numbness and vomiting, followed by intense pain and gangrene, ultimately resulting in death, aligning closely with the descriptions provided by Diodorus. In 333 BC, Alexander the Great's army faced another devastating unconventional weapon. The Phoenicians defending Tyre in Lebanon ingeniously heated sand in shallow bronze bowls. Then they rained the red-hot sand down onto Alexander's men. Ancient historians describe the ghastly scene as the hot grain sifted under the soldiers' armor and burned deeply into their flesh, causing agonizing death. The burning shrapnel anticipated the fatal, deep burns inflicted by modern thermite or white phosphorus bombs, invented more than 2,000 years later and recently used in the same geographic region. The grim legacy of chemical weapons in the form of poisoned arrows and spears stretches back millennia, with the earliest recorded instances dating as far as the late Stone Age, around 10,000 BCE. Poisoned arrows also have a rich presence in mythology, notably in Greek legends, where Hercules dispatched the centaur Nessus using an arrow tainted with the blood of the Lernaean Hydra. In Homer's epic The Odyssey, the Greek hero Odysseus poisons an arrow with hellebore. These poisoned projectiles also find mention in another of Homer's works, the Iliad, narrating the Trojan War, where both the Achaeans and Trojans utilized poisoned arrows and spears. Additionally, the Bible's book of Job references poisoned darts in the context of the righteous man Job's suffering. It's interesting to note that modern terms like poisonous and toxin trace their origins back to the ancient Greek word toxon, signifying bow, and the Old Persian taxa, meaning arrow. Poisoned arrows found practical use among various ancient civilizations, including the Gauls, ancient Romans, and nomadic Scythians and Thorns. Greek and Roman historians have documented historical battles where poisoned projectile recipes and poisoned arrows played pivotal roles. The use of chemical weapons, as most people now recognize, began during World War I, with both sides deploying poisonous gases like chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gas in grenades and artillery shells, resulting in nearly 100,000 deaths and over 1 million casualties globally. The Geneva Protocol of 1925 prohibited the use of chemical weapons, but had shortcomings, such as not banning their development, production, or stockpiling. Moreover, some states that ratified it reserved the right to use these weapons under certain conditions. Despite this, chemical weapons were used during World War II in Nazi concentration camps and in Asia, but not on European battlefields. The Cold War era witnessed the significant development, manufacture, and stockpiling of chemical weapons, with approximately 25 states possessing such capabilities by the 1970s and 80s. Since World War II, there have been few reported instances of chemical weapon use, notably by Iraq in the 1980s against Iran. During the 1980s, Saddam Hussein received significant support from the United States, despite Iraq's repeated use of chemical weapons in its war with Iran. In 1983, Iraq deployed mustard gas against Iranian forces, and the Reagan administration did not raise objections. Additionally, in 1987, the US provided Saddam with intelligence about an impending Iranian invasion, and President Reagan expressed that an Iranian victory was unacceptable. In response to the US warning, Saddam conducted multiple sarin gas attacks on Iranian forces, resulting in the tragic deaths of over 20,000 people and injuries to thousands more. Later, he used sarin gas to suppress an uprising in northern Iraq, leading to the deaths of more than 5,000 Kurds. Retired Air Force Colonel Rick Francona, who served as the military attaché in Baghdad during the 1988 chemical attacks, disclosed that the US deliberately ignored Saddam's use of chemical weapons because Iraq was seen as the lesser of two evils in the context of the ongoing conflict. Iraq's intent to use nerve gas was not explicitly communicated, as it was already known to US authorities. More recently, when facing dire circumstances during the uprising that began in 2011, the Syrian regime has demonstrated a willingness to employ these weapons. Syria used chemical weapons. They first began amassing chemical weapons in the 1970s and 80s following consecutive defeats in wars against Israel. These weapons were viewed as a last-ditch effort to counter Israel's military supremacy, including its nuclear capabilities. Syria has continued to produce chemical weapons steadily over the years, resulting in an estimated stockpile of 1,000 tons stored in 50 facilities. Former Pentagon official Stephen Bucci characterizes Syria as a superpower of chemical weapons. Today in 2023, Saudi Arabia is suspected of employing US-supplied white phosphorus munitions in its conflict in Yemen, as suggested by images and videos circulated on social media. This has prompted concerns from human rights organizations regarding the potential use of this highly incendiary substance against civilian populations. US regulations permit the sale of white phosphorus munitions to other nations for specific purposes, such as signaling to troops and generating smokescreens. These munitions release white phosphorus that spontaneously ignites in the air, producing dense white smoke. However, when employed against soldiers or civilians, white phosphorus can cause severe harm and fatalities by burning deep into the bone.